And today, our very own Sally Broadhead from the metropolis of Barnbar, who's our area sales manager for Northern New South Wales and Southern and Central Queensland, will do an update for us on Voraxor, our new Group G pre-em herbicide, also used in the knockdown space and fallow. It's a fantastic new product, and we're looking forward to hearing what Sally has to say this morning. All right, so thank you very much, everybody, for dialing in this morning. And Sally, fire away.
Thanks, Ed. So first yet, welcome to everybody. Thank you for giving up a bit of your time to come and listen to what we have to say this morning. So yeah, for anyone that doesn't know me, I've been with BASF just a little bit over 12 months, started in the middle of COVID. So if you haven't seen too much of me, some spots, that's probably why. But yeah, so I'm just going to go through what we've been seeing around the traps with Voraxor this year, because we obviously couldn't get you to come and have a look, unfortunately, at what's going on at our Tamworth farm. So yeah, Voraxor was launched end of last year, our new Group G product, so for broadleaves, and it also helps with annual rye as well as an added bonus. So the key messages we're going to go through today is, you know, the flexibility, combining the knockdown, so the knockdown that you all know and love from our sharpen product, plus the residual activity on some of our key weeds that we're finding in the north. Being a new mode of action for broadleaf control under our cereals as a pre-em, and also looking into pulses. So that'll be a label expansion into the future that we're doing work on at the moment. And then managing some of our really hard weeds up in the north, so wireweed, bindweed, milk thistle, fleabane, and some future projects looking into C4 grasses. So we've also seen that it's showing potential with some of our grasses as well. So just to take you through what Voraxor is and where it fits, so it's a double Group G, so they're PPO inhibitors, saflufenicil, which is our active outer sharpen, and our new Group G trifludimoxazine. So it's used IBS for pre-em control, and there's 17 broadleaf weeds on the label at the moment. You know, that's by no means includes everything that you will see control of, and we're always working on expanding those labels as we get more data on our new and on our new weeds. So at the moment it's registered under wheat, barley and durum as a pre-em. Oats, pulses and fallow expansion we're expecting in 2024. They'll give you up to 12 weeks residual control of your broadies. And then as a knockdown, it also offers control of 29 broadleaf weeds. And we're also seeing some knockdown and control of some young gly-resistant annual ryegrass and suppression of annual ryegrass in lighter soils. So that work obviously is still continuing as well, you know, to see how far that can be pushed, and also, yeah, it's a very good all-round product. So this is the current label rate. So there's 3 application options at the moment. So our first one is our 200 mil rate. So that's our pre-em rate incorporated by sowing 0 to 7 days prior to planting our cereals. So that's going to give you knockdown, and it's also going to give you residual up to 12 weeks. Our second one at 240 mils, so that's just an extra bump in product to give you a little bit longer before you sow. So if you know you're 2 weeks out, you know you're not going to get back on that paddock, you can give your spray, knock your weeds down, you know, 2 weeks later come back in and plant and still get that up to 12 weeks residual. And then we also have the fallow summer knockdown rate. So that's 100 mils. So 100 mils of this gives you the equivalent of 34 grams of saflufenicil that you'd see in our sharpen. So that's, when you're using this, you're going to see very similar results to sharpen with a little bit extra. So it's also going to give you a bit on your annual ryegrass that we don't see out of sharpen, mixed with, you know, all your usual tank partners, and it does actually have registration as a standalone product as well. So this is just a little picture that shows how the two actives complement each other, I guess. So what we did here is got a plastic tube, basically, packed it full of soil and seeds, sprayed the top of it with the chemical and watered it through, and then cut it down the middle, split it open, and see where the weeds can still grow, basically. So you can see with the Voraxor, which is your new active, it sticks around the top, so it's not moving anywhere too far, sticks around the top and helps with all those surface germinators, and that's why you're getting that up to 12 weeks residual. Your Kixor is your saflufenicil, moves through the profile, will help with lower germinating weeds, but yeah, moves through pretty quickly. That's why sort of we don't get too much residual with that product. So we're just going to go through, the flexibility with the knockdown and residual. So it's sort of a 2-for-1. So this is some of our knockdown work we did. This was done at the Tamworth farm last year. So basically what happened is we got there, we sprayed these plots out, and we were there at field days for 4 days after, basically. And every day you walked into the plots, you could just see them dying more and more each day. So this was 3 days after application. So the Voraxor at 100 mils with your glyphosate plus your Hasten, obviously, always has to be used with Hasten. And then with your paraquat. So yeah, 3 days after, you're seeing some pretty good results. It's very quick to work, and it's sort of it's very visual, done a pretty good job there. And they're these same plots 14 days after. So 3 days, you're starting to see what it's doing. 14 days, and there's very little left there. And that obviously had a very high oat problem in those things. So it was kind of surprising to see it did such a good job on such big oats. But yeah, it's just showing how quickly you can expect to see it working in the paddock. So now we're looking at it underneath our cereals, so our current registered use pattern. So yeah, so you're going to get that knockdown, but also here's our residual. So the first picture shows you what you're going to get with a general group G. So something like a oxyfluorophane, it's just a knockdown aid. So it's giving you knockdown mixed with your gly, whatever. And as you could expect, the little weeds are starting to come 6 weeks after treatment. There's plenty of weeds in there because it obviously doesn't do anything residually. So the next picture shows Voraxor at 200 mils plus gly plus ester, and that also would have had Hasten in the tank. And yeah, 6 weeks after treatment, and the next two photos, just one zoomed in a little bit, is showing that there are very few weeds in those paddocks. So in the plant line, yeah, there are some. So obviously, as you you sow it, you're going to move a little bit of that chemical out of the furrow. So if you're going to see escapes in the plant line, yeah, that's pretty normal. And obviously crop competition usually sorts those out pretty quickly. So this was a photo taken down at Marra by my colleague, a Southern colleague, Curtis. So thank you, Curtis. So these are some photos from our Tamworth research farm. So this is the untreated control, just to show you what kind of weed pressure we have over there. So the Tamworth crew are very, very good at breeding weeds. They do a very good job for us breeding the weeds up. So yeah, these are very high pressure plots, had a lot of rain this year. So these were done this year. And so untreated control versus Voraxor and Hasten. So there's nothing else mixed in with that. And 12 weeks after treatment, we're seeing some really good control. Once again, still some in the plant line, but in between is looking very clean. So this is some stuff that was done up on the downs at Tassari. So these are some photos that Sarah took for us. So this is showing also the crop safety. So this is under Durham. This was a simulated population, ryegrass, phalaris, chickpeas and canola, because they just don't have too many weeds in this site. So we had to fake it. So, but we're seeing the Voraxor at 200 mils plus our Hasten IBS is keeping those pretty clean and no crop effect. And then here's up in the same spot, so the same situation, 58 days after planting. And this is on barley, so showing that it's very safe on barley too, and has done a good job cleaning up those weeds in the inter-row. So now we're going to have a look at some photos of our hard to kill weeds. So yeah, like I said, our Tamworth farm is very good at breeding weeds for us. So they're very, very good at breeding wireweed and bindweed. So this is showing, so our untreated control, if you have a good look at that, there's a lot of little wireweed, but you can also see some black bindweed coming up amongst there too. So these plots, yeah, very high infestations of black bindweed and wireweed. And then our middle photo is just a close-up of that. So it's just showing, just showing how many little wireweeds are in there. And then our next slide is just showing our Voraxor plots. So yeah, very clean in the inter-row, given, like I said, wet conditions and given how high the weed burden is. So the next slides are just showing some comparison between Callisto and Voraxor. So our Callisto plots, you can still see quite a bit of bindweed in those plots and quite a bit of wireweed in the inter-row. So hopefully they're zoomed in enough for everyone to be able to see these. And then the Voraxor plot, once again, showing it pretty clean. A few in the plant line, but yeah, not too much in the inter-row at all. So it's holding those weeds back very well. And here's the same trial with the versus the Callisto, just from a different angle. So and zoomed out a little bit. So once again, you can see that there's quite a few weeds in that Callisto plot versus the Voraxor plot. Where we're seeing it very clean. So we're very happy with how Voraxor performed at our Tamworth farm this year. So these are some photos again from Curtis in the south. Yeah, you can see this is one's Voraxor versus Sakura and Callisto. So this also had Luximax in it, which is our rye product, obviously. So yeah, having the combination between the Voraxor and the Luximax taking care of both of our cereals, both of our grass weeds and our broadleaf weeds in a combination. So yes, doing a very good job down there. And you can see how wet these paddocks are. So, you know, there was plenty of rainfall and weed pressure. And these are the same plots. They're just a few different photos and zoomed in a little bit. So Voraxor Luximax on the left. So showing, once again, there's a few little ones poking up in the plant line, but yeah, holding it better than the Sakura and Callisto mixture. So these are some more photos from our Tamworth farm. Once again, very high weed pressure. Dead nettle is also another weed we have a lot of over at the farm, and you can see some dead nettle coming up there, as well as our wireweed and bindweed. And this one had the Voraxor plus the Luximax as well, so that combo of products. And this is just showing what we're seeing with the knockdown on hard to kill weeds. So obviously our milkies and our fleabane are always problem weeds. Yeah, added with at the 100 ml weight rate with Gly and some Hasten. Yeah, seeing some very good results out in the field. You know, taking these weeds down. So this one was done up near the border, the Queensland-New South Wales border. And this one was one done down south. So this was a broadacre spray, 1.5 litres of Gly, 100 ml of Voraxor plus our Hasten. 5 days after treatment, and you know, this was the result that was seen out in the paddock. So yeah, farmer and agro were very happy with what they saw. And so this is just another one comparing untreated versus Voraxor plus Hasten. 7 days after application. So yeah, there's a pretty distinct line there showing how good of a job it's done. So this one's been done out of a camera sprayer as opposed to a broadacre spray. So now I'm just going to take you through some of the pulse label expansion work. Like I said, we're not looking at having pulses on the label until probably 2024 at this stage. So this work is all ongoing. You know, we're hoping to have permits probably 2023 to start to have a look at some of this out in the field. But yeah, just wanted to take you through, you know, where we're seeing this going into that pulse market moving forward. Pardon me. So the first thing I will tell you about this slide is in some of these pulse slides, you will see that the crop stand is a bit ordinary. So in that untreated control, there's not too many chickpeas in there. That has nothing to do with any of the chemistries used over there at all. It's to do with mice and ducks and wet weather. So we had a bit of a caning from those three things this year. And it made it a little bit hard for some of the plots to come up. So yeah, any crops that are looking a bit thin, yeah, you can blame mostly the ducks and the mice for that. So this was 6 weeks after treatment, showing the untreated control just to show how big the weed pressure is over there, and then the Voraxor at 200 mils plus the Hasten at 1%. So yeah, you can still see a few little weeds poking about there, but compared to that untreated control, that's looking pretty good. So these are the same plots 18 weeks after planting. So I got over to the farm a few weeks ago to have a look at these, and that untreated control, that's actually a chickpea plot. It's not a canola plot, and it's full of volunteer canola, dead nettle, wireweed, a bit of shepherd's purse as well. So yeah, they were very, very messy where we didn't treat them, and then shows the Voraxor plus the Hasten, you know, doing a pretty good job to, you know, it actually looks like a chickpea crop, which is a bonus. And that's just from the top of it as well. So the untreated control, you could barely find a chickpea plant in there. It was just choked out, whereas putting the Voraxor and Hasten underneath, yeah, you can still see a few little dead nettle flowers poking up, but in general, it looks like a chickpea crop. So yeah, they were looking really good. So like I said, 18 weeks after planting and very wet conditions. So this is just comparing Voraxor and Hasten with what growers are doing out in the field now. So it's all good to put it up against untreated controls, but that's not really what's happening out in the real world. So this is against simazine and balance, and yeah, comparing it to simazine balance, it's looking pretty good. So you know, we're looking towards an extra option for your chemistry rotations and you know, that sort of thing. We know more and more people are using balance into summer. You know, so it's using your chemistry wisely so we don't break any of them. So giving you an extra option to put into your rotation. So this slide's a little bit hard to see, but I've got a few zoomed in ones in the next few slides. So this is looking at faba beans, so mostly dead nettle and wireweed, and there was also some shepherd's purse in these plots. Once again, you can see that the faba beans were struggling a little bit thanks to the mice and the ducks, but that untreated control has quite a few weeds in it as compared to Voraxor, and then Reflex is looking quite good, but I'll do some zoomed in photos as well. So there's the Voraxor, and yeah, we could barely find a weed in that plot. And then in the next slide, you'll just see the Reflex at 1500 mils. And I've just circled a few of those little weeds because they are very hard to see. They're only very small. So yeah, certainly not doing a terrible job, but yeah, there's still some little weeds coming through into that. So this is some more work in the faba beans. So this is versus the untreated control. once again to demonstrate just how high that weed pressure is. You can see in there's some dead nettle, some wireweed that's starting to get a little bit bigger, and yeah, lots of really small stuff. And then with the Voraxor hasten plots, still some in the plant row, especially where the faba beans didn't come up because they've had no crop competition. And that chemical was obviously moved out of those lines when the crop was planted. These are these same plots 18 weeks after planting. So our untreated control pretty much just looks like a crop of shepherd's purse. It's come up above the faba beans and sort of taken over. And then with the Voraxor and the hasten, yeah, when you open those crops up right down in the bottom, you know, there was still, you know, some small weeds in there, but they hadn't really got a chance to take off because the crop just got up and away from it. So they were looking really good. So this is showing the Voraxor versus simazine and balance once again. So what growers are sort of doing out there, and also versus reflex. So in this particular trial, the reflex wasn't holding very well at all. So this was the 950 mil rate. The simazine and balance, quite a lot of weeds in the plant row, again, where there was no crop competition particularly. And the Voraxor, you know, comparing it to what growers are doing at the moment is looking pretty clean there. And this is just some field peas as well. So yeah, we're you know, the guys at the farm and all are pretty confident under all of these crops that the crop safety is pretty good. So obviously that work is going to be still ongoing. So not only obviously are we looking at weed control, but also, you know, crop safety is paramount as well. So, you know, we're seeing some really good crop safety under all our pulses. So yeah, untreated control, very messy. The Voraxor is looking very good under the field peas. And then that's our Voraxor versus the reflex under the field peas as well. So yeah, still quite a few more weeds in those reflex plots. And now just to go through a little bit of our label expansion work as well, looking at C4 grasses. And this work was done using optical sprayers. So yeah, we sort of started to see just a little bit of a bonus that it was giving us something on our C4 grasses. So this is, you know, work going forward, looking into, you know, where that's going to fit and how that's going to help. So this was a commercial spray, 29 days after treatment, 100 mils of Voraxor plus our hasten plus 4 litres of paraquat in 100 litres of water, done with an optical sprayer. So this was done up at Biloela, and yeah, it's, you know, those feathertop roads are not looking real happy there. So I don't think you're going to see those coming back. So this was so in a fallow situation where they'd put in a mung bean crop that had then subsequently failed. So then gone over with the optical sprayer. And then this is some more feathertop roads, a bit of barnyard and some button grass. This is 9 days after treatment, up near Gundy, or up at Kindon. And yeah, once again, the 100 mil Voraxor rate. So the 100 mil Voraxor rate is our fallow registration. So even though this is through camera sprayers, yeah, that's obviously still on label because it's still a label rate. Always with our 1% hasten, and then this one was with 2 litres of paraquat in 100 litres of water. So yeah, you can see in that first photo with the tufts, there are still you know, the odd little green leaf down in the butt. But yeah, I don't think so. Well, there was 30 mils of rain 5 days after treatment. So, and this is 9 days after treatment. So yeah, pretty good result with that. So just to wrap up on back to our key messages. So yeah, our flexibility, combining our knockdown that we all know and love from our sharpen product, plus a bit extra, plus getting that residual activity on those key weeds. Yeah, new mode of action as a pre-em under both cereals and into the future under our pulses. So, you know, trying to rotate our chemistry so that all the chemistries last us longer. And then, yeah, managing our wireweed, bindweed, milk thistle, fleabane, and looking at the future into C4 grasses. So, you know, trying to cover off on, you know, on some of those really big problem weeds that we all are dealing with up in the northern zone. So I've just chucked up a slide with all our contact details. So yeah, if you have any more questions about any of this stuff, please feel free to get in touch with one of us. Yeah, either myself or Dave as our sales manager, Sarah if it's a tech question, and yeah, Ed if Ed is always happy to take questions from out in the field. So he, I think he feels a bit neglected down there near Melbourne, and hasn't been able to get up and see us as much. So always happy to take questions, so he knows what's going on up in the north. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, and please yell out if you've got some questions.
So just from the chat, we've got a question around plant backs for summer crops, and maybe added into that, why are our Voraxor plant backs so much longer than sharpen? That's our first one, if you want to.
Yep, so basically all of the work that was done for the Voraxor plant backs were based on our top label rate, so which is 240 mils. So when it was developed, that's what all our plant backs were based on. So we currently have submissions in with the APVMA to have the plant backs for the 100 mil knockdown rate. So that's our straight knockdown, you know, more equivalent to your sharpen, having that reduced and brought back in line with what you'll see on the sharpen label. So we should see those changes coming sometime next year, hopefully probably about Q3 next year. But yeah, that's why it was done at the higher rates, but we are in the process of working with the APVMA to reduce those rates back.
And on the so I'm not sure whether that question was about, I'm thinking it was about the knockdown rate, but for the residual. So at the minute, as far as the summer crops, we're a month back to, I think most summer crops, one of the real, it's to beans and the like, 3 months back to cotton, 6 months back to sunnies, and 9 months back to sunflower. That's how it stands at the minute on the label. If you're using the residual rate, those numbers will stay the same. One big watch out is yeah, sunflowers and safflowers. So being Asteraceae species, saflufenicil is really active on Asteraceae. So we probably are still going to have some pretty significant plant backs around to sunnies and safflower. Another question is any commentary around milk thistle control on milkies that are running up, so getting quite big. Brownout products have traditionally struggled against those. So once they're small, you know, small versus large weeds and controlling those.
Well, I guess, you know, most of the weeds that are on the label are going to be small rosettes, I guess. You know, so being a PPI inhibitor, I guess how they work is they kind of, they go to the sugars, so they move out, up and out. So you kind of start to fill the plant from the outside in. So I guess that's kind of a rate thing. The higher rates, like the 100 mils is your 34 grams of sharpen. So it's definitely going to help to do a better job because, you know, you've got that higher active load helping to burn those back down. But I guess what I've kind of seen and heard is sometimes you'll get some really good control on those big milkies and other times not so much. And a lot of that depends on, you know, different things like your soil moisture, you know, how hot it is, your tank mix partner, those kind of, yeah, so there's kind of lots of different things going on, like those photos that we saw from Curtis down south. They were some really big milkies and it absolutely smoked them. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that can determine whether you're going to get that good a job every single time, I guess. So tank mix partner's probably one of the one of the things as well, definitely, and time of year.
So on that, what's the best tank mix partner if you're using it as a knockdown? What's the best tank mix partner you can run with?
Yep. So it does have it is registered for a standalone product. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that it is registered for standalone application just with its hasten. You can mix it with glyparaquat and 2,4-D. So if you're chasing those big off-label milkies or fleabanes, Voraxor plus 2,4-D is probably your best bet, even if it's just a spike. I know you can't always put a 2,4-D in summer. I've been in the north with cotton and things around, but if it is an option, adding a 2,4-D into that mix is really showing some really good results. Second best would probably be Voraxor and paraquat. If you're chasing the big the really big gnarly milkies and fleabane. If you have mixed populations with grasses plus your broadleaves, it can depend on your time of year. So we know sharpen and glide can be antagonistic in summer with high light intensity, just with how the product actually works in the plant. On your summer grasses. So we're not sure if this is the same with Voraxor. It's something we're still looking at, but we suspect it might be. So just with the way that it works so quickly, it kind of works too quickly to let the glide do what it's supposed to be doing. But we're doing some more work on this over summer, are we, Sarah? There's some trials going out?
Yeah, we've got some more trials around just that going out this summer. So just quickly, there's more questions coming through, which is good, but I'll give you a quick update. Some trial work this summer that is going down both at the farm and also up here on the Darling Downs. We're chasing some more information around those C4 grasses, so both small and large, broadacre and camera spray. We're looking at comparing different group Gs, because all the group G actives work slightly differently, and I do think it's sort of important that we really understand how they work to know which product is the best, particularly for knockdowns up in our part of the world. We're looking at the 2,4-D sort of mixtures on those large weeds. So exactly around your sort of question, Glenn, is spike rate of 300 versus, I don't know, 500, and how that's going to have an impact on those big weeds. We're also looking at broadleaf and C4 grass residual at those higher rates. And we've got a whole series of double knock trials around that C4 grass question. So where does Voraxor fit in a double knock situation? We think we've got a pretty good feel on it, but we will be doing some more trial work around that this summer. So on with the question. So Stu Thorne has a comment, would be nice to see Pigeon Pea included in the crop label extension. So what we're hoping, Stu, is that we'll be able to get, the way the APVMA works at the minute is our registrations are crop groupings. So as far as our summer pulses go, we're hoping that we can get that as part of the crop grouping. But yes, a good point. Glenn, did you do any assessments or survival counts on summer grass control 6 to 8 weeks post-spray? Most paddocks sprayed with paraquat and additives look pretty good at 7 to 14, but the big test is regrowth a few weeks later on. Yes, we did. Our assessments do go out, particularly with the grass species and summer species. We go out to, well, it depends on the trial really, but we can go out to as far as 80 days. And the camera sprayer stuff that we've seen so far with D4 grasses is looking really good. So it's definitely holding in there. How will Voraxor compare against Sharpen for fleabane control, particularly on older plants?
Yeah, I suppose it has the Sharpen active in it. That's probably work that's still ongoing. Anecdotal evidence suggests it gives you that little bit more. But yeah, that's probably something that's, that question is probably still out there. Like I said, we've only really sort of had more anecdotal evidence that it seems to be doing that little bit more. But yeah, that's something we'll probably keep looking into.
Any work being done in zero-till systems using discs instead of IBS with residual rates, and is it still going to offer anything? So disc versus tine.
Yeah, so obviously current label is IBS, knife point press wheel. So at the moment, that's what we're bound by because that's what our label says, because that's how the work was being done. And we do know though that, Voraxor as a broadleaf herbicide is going to be safer to the crop than a grass preem, just because broadleaves is what it's working on rather than our grasses. And we have been working to see if we can broaden the scope of the label. So we do currently have submissions in with the APVMA to allow application IBS, ensuring good physical separation of the planted seed and herbicide. So, it's about having some physical separation of that herbicide and that seed. So, yeah, it's, discs aren't discs. As soon as you take them out of the shop, they're often modified. So, it's really about having the seeder set up so that it's moving some of that treated soil out of the planting furrow to ensure we've got crop safety there. Avoid throwing the treated soil into the adjacent crop rows. We don't want that soil then slumping back into the plant line. So we do really want to try and physically separate the seed and the chemical from being, in direct contact. So, but it is something we're working on, and it is something that, we're trying to work with the APVMA around wording and things, to make it, to make it more clear that it's not so much a planning system, it's that physical separation. So, but yeah, if you are planning on mixing it with any of your grass preems, particularly, make sure that you're keeping it physically separated and follow that any grass preem labels. Because if you're keeping it away as much as the grass preems need it, you're going to be more than safe. But yeah, that's just a little watch out that they're going to be probably more important to be following with your separation of your seed and your chemical.
Cool. Next question. Can we get Voraxor as a post-plant pre-M for our pulse crops on traditionally wide rows with crop safety being positional tolerance in the planting line? So I guess, PSPE versus IBS.
So the guys at the farm are actually looking at PSPE at the moment. They've got some trials down on that. Initially, that is looking, it's looking quite good, but that work is still ongoing. So it's definitely something we are working towards to see if that's going to be an acceptable use rate. Crop safety is always going to be top of mind. But yeah, potentially, but we're still working on it because we need to make sure that it's going to be, exceptionally safe out in the field for the farmers.
I think that the point to your question too, Paul, is our crop safety work, we do it at 2 times the top label rate, and that is simply because we account for headlands and the like. So we really want to see it safe at 2 times that top label rate. It's looking pretty good at the minute, but like Sally said, it's until it's on a label and through the registration process, we can't necessarily guarantee anything, but we've got that on our radar. We've got a comment from Curtis. So Curtis is our southern sales rep, who some of those photos came out of his patch, and he says that those southern New South Wales big milkies didn't grow back, and a high water rate is your friend when tackling larger than label growth stages. Completely agree. And I think too, that's where we see a difference when you're playing with camera sprayers and rates and whatnot. The water volume absolutely makes a massive difference on those big ones. Paul has another question. Paul has a question. Have you checked on antagonism on milk thistle over summer versus winter applications and the temperature impacts on speed of uptake and disruption of glyme movement? So that work is still ongoing. We are aware of the issues, particularly, I guess, for us in the north with light intensity, but that's part of our ongoing trial work there, Paul. So the summer versus winter with milkies. Any future use with Voraxor as a desiccant partner with Reglone or Paraquat? So we have sharpened registered as a desiccant and also for seed set reduction in certain crops, pulses being one of them. Voraxor, we will not be going down that path at the minute, and it's to do with residues, basically. So that new active, that trifludium that was mentioned, yeah, it tends to hang around. So at this point in time, Voraxor won't be going into that use pattern. I think there's still a lot of also a lot of work to be done with feeding studies and liver accumulation studies and whatnot. So at this point, that's a no. A comment here from Phil: the size of the root system plays a big role, especially if you get follow-up rain. So with large fleabane, it is a watch out, and sow thistle perhaps not so much, but there are big weeds and there are bigger weeds. Always limitations and compromise. Good point. If summer groupings, pulse crops or any pulse crop, can you please put on the label the exact crops pertaining to your pulse crop label? It always creates a lot of confusion down the track if it's not on there. Completely agree, Macca. Large fleabane does more, but there's always a limitation due to the root system. Double knock should always be a consideration for your large weeds. Please put plant backs to mung beans on the label. Yes, we've got that covered, Hugh. We will have mung beans, hopefully, on our label eventually. Yeah, Paul McIntosh, great stuff about the positional tolerance for our northern winter pulses. Thank you, Paul. But yeah, any other questions, feel free to pipe up. You can unmute yourself and ask any further questions if you've got any burning questions going. Otherwise, yeah, if you hopefully have our contact details, so feel free to give one of us a bell if you do think of something sort of later on as you're driving around.
And thank you very much for everyone for jumping on. I know it's a very busy time of year, so we're very appreciative that you could all jump on and have a listen to what we've got to say on a Wednesday morning.